This is a project I did over a year ago. I've used it to teach various classes. You can see it's dirty. I've brought it around with me a whole bunch of places, and I've taught the timeline of the Bible and our grand narrative. So, of course, we start in the beginning here in creation. 6 days, everything was created: sun, moon, animals, man. There was a covenant made with man to be fruitful, multiply, and take care of the Garden of Eden, where they were placed. In the garden, in the middle of the garden, there were two trees: the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. God said, "Do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because you will surely die." And, well, sure enough, we move to the fall, and sin enters the world because of man eating the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And man is then kicked out of the garden, and they will have painful toil and labor. Men, painful toil of the soil; women, painful labor with childbearing. We move to Noah. Man became so sinful, God wanted to restart. Noah built an ark, flooded the earth, and Noah and his family were spared because they were righteous in God's sight. And God made the same covenant with Noah that he did with Adam, is be fruitful and multiply. We get into the patriarchs. This is sometime later, all in the book of Genesis still. God made a covenant with Abraham that all nations will be blessed through him. The covenant was passed down to Abraham's son Isaac and Isaac's son Jacob. One of Jacob's sons, named Joseph, he led the descendants of Abraham and Isaac into Egypt. You move from kind of the Middle East to Egypt, different culture, and they end up being enslaved there for 400 years. So for about 400 years, they were there in slavery, and it wasn't until Moses came around. Moses was called by God to lead Israel, which is Abraham's descendants, out of slavery into the land that was promised, which is Israel currently. And Moses was given the law. Israel was set to follow him. Sacrifice for sin was introduced, and Israel entered a covenant with God. You follow the law, good things happen. You don't follow the law, bad things happen. Pretty black and white law there. Joshua, he was Moses's kind of right-hand man, and then when Moses died, right before entering the promised land, Joshua takes them into the promised land, enters there, and Joshua was told to drive out the nations. He drove out some of them, but didn't drive out all of them. From here we go into Judges, the time period of the Judges. God raised up the judges to lead Israel, and there would always be rest in the land. They would rebel against God. They would get punished by being taken over, and then God would restore them because they'd cry out and need God's help. From there you go into the United Kingdom, because the people of Israel said, "Hey, we want a king," even though God was supposed to be their king. So the first one is Saul, chosen by God. The next one is David, and God made a covenant with David saying his house will be established forever. Solomon is David's son, and he builds a temple for God. The divided kingdom. After King Solomon, the kingdom is divided north and south. The north is called Israel, after the name of Abraham's descendants, and the south is called Judah, the tribe that King David is from. And there were only 8 good kings in the tribe of Judah, and 0 kings in the nation of Israel. So the prophets, this was all happening at the same time as the next couple pieces. So they foretold the fall of Israel and Judah, and they told the coming of Jesus Christ. The falls, this is where both kingdoms fall. They both did evil, and Israel was taken in 722 BC, and Judah was taken in 586 BC. The only reason Judah lasted longer was because they had more good kings than Israel. Either way, they were both taken. One was taken by Assyria. Babylon took over Assyria and then took over Judah about looks like 160-ish years later. We get into the exile. This is the time that both of the kingdoms were taken into other cultures. The kingdom of Israel assimilated into Assyrian culture, and they became what is later called Samaritans. And the Judah was taken into Babylon, but was not told to assimilate. And they were what later becomes the Jews in Jesus' time and roughly the book of Acts. So release and returns, the king of Persia. Persia overtook Babylon and Assyria and issued a decree. There were 3 returns that came back from Judah. One was Zerubbabel, one was Ezra, one was Nehemiah. Ezra rebuilt the temple, Nehemiah rebuilt the city wall, and roughly right after that time there was silence for 400 years. John the Baptist, he was a prophet before Jesus. He was preparing a way, making straight a highway for the Lord. Then we get to Jesus Christ. And he, of course, born to the Virgin Mary in Bethlehem, as was prophesied up here in the prophets. He's born in Bethlehem as a descendant of David, which is also part of the covenant from the United Kingdom. And, of course, he lived a perfect life, taught many people, performed miracles. Leaders didn't like it. The Jewish leaders that had come back from Judah right about this time. And the leaders didn't like him, didn't like what he was doing, and they nailed him to a cross. And he was buried 3 days, rose to life, and that sacrifice covered all sins for all cultures. Everyone all over the world, men and women, slave or free, is redeemed through the blood of Jesus Christ. And then we get into the time period of Acts. Jesus' followers, his 12 disciples that followed him everywhere, along with 120 other people that were with him all the time, spread the gospel for, it only shows about 60 years because that's what's roughly recorded in the Bible. But followers in the first and second century were spreading the gospel all over the place. And of course, we are right about here. We are living. We know God because his followers have spread the gospel everywhere. And Jesus' sacrifice, we are able to live as a part of this grand narrative. And Revelation, Jesus is going to return at some point, gather up the believers, final showdown with the devil. Jesus will win, of course. And we will have a new heaven and new earth with believers. So, the grand narrative of the Bible, beginning to end, Jesus Christ is for all cultures. Everyone all over the world can believe in him, be forgiven, and have eternal life.